All right, welcome to the Bow Trader Podcast. Whether you're a longtime listener or joining us for the first time, man, I'm glad you're here. My name's John Keene, and I am the founder of Bow Trader, and we're just excited to be able to do this podcast and bring this to you on a weekly basis. You know, on the podcast, we're diving headfirst into the wild world of hunting and the great outdoors. We talk about all kind of different things, whether it's tracking and scouting tactics or just cutting up and telling silly tales and stories about things that we've gotten into when we've been out there trying to do some hunting. But we're always focused on the beauty of God's creation. From gear reviews and how to practice to finally making it to that awesome thwack of fall, buddy, we are here for it. Our faith is woven into every episode with real, down-to-earth discussions because it's not just about the hunt. It's truly about what matters most. So grab your gear, settle in, get you a cup of coffee, and let's get after it.
Was it January 14th? Was the first one? Yeah. It's been fun, man. Yeah. Like I said, it's just he's brought some folks in. It's been fun to get to meet them, and then you know we. It's like I said, it's just a conversation, really, and it's been a lot of fun, and I glean from Dub's wisdom, and
every day I get to do that every day.
Every day, and so he gets real talkative when we talk.
I feel like it's knowledge, not wisdom.
Oh man, you ooze wisdom, and but he'll be real talk. We'll talk about bows or something, and then he starts getting more and more quiet. We start talking about other stuff, but
hey, stick with your knowledge base, right?
Yeah, but
we're trying to expand that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, Proverbs says that you know, what is it about being a fool? If you keep your mouth shut, sometimes nobody knows. Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's always been my issue. Sometimes I talk about things I probably shouldn't be talking about.
Don't know about. So, but anyway. But yeah, so it's been fun. But
yeah, it's good.
Any instructions for today?
No, just don't say anything stupid so I don't have to edit it. Yeah. I don't like editing.
Good luck with that.
Have you had to do that a lot with me?
Okay. No, we don't edit. We just whatever we say, we throw it in there and you know, and put it out for people to listen to. So yeah. I mean, I think it just makes more sense to do that with a podcast.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's definitely just more authentic. You know, you're just talking, you know, I mean, if you make a mistake, you know.
I watch quite a few podcasts and I say watch on YouTube. Most everything's Georgia football related. And, you know, a couple of the guys are really, really good. And then some of them are really, really pieced together, you know.
Yeah.
Like edited, you know, it's choppy.
Yeah.
And, it's definitely less audibly palatable or whatever, you know. Yeah. But of course, the one that, and I can't. I'm not going to say like one in particular, but it's great. I really enjoy it, but it is kind of pieced together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing we try not to do is throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because we all got opinions about stuff, and you know, it just depends on what it is. But yeah, it's a fun time for sure. So, well, guys, let's pray together. We'll get rolling here. Father, we love you, and we're thankful for the opportunity to be able to come together as men this morning, to be able to discuss things about our lives and things that we see that we have the opportunity to do, and or what it means that or how you're wanting to use those things to grow us and draw us closer to you. Lord, that's the desire of our hearts. We ask you to use our voices this morning, and that whoever listens to this, that they'd be drawn closer to you, and realize that if we can do it, anybody can do it. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Well, good deal. Well, we got part of the gang here this morning, and we got a new guy. So, new guy, tell us who you are.
Marty Edge.
Marty Edge. All right. How do we know Marty Edge?
So I've been really excited about this one. Marty, I've known now for over 3 years, and he's actually the reason that I track deer now.
Okay.
And so it's funny. He and I've been friends for a while, but I don't know how much time we've actually spent in each other's presence, like
together, right?
Yeah. So
not a lot, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, you count on one hand easy, right? But I consider him a good friend.
Right.
But it's funny because my youngest son calls him my text friend.
Kind of like a work spouse.
Yeah. And so he said, "Is that your text friend, Marty?" And I said, "Yeah, that's him." But yeah, so I'm really excited to have him here, just to talk some about his experiences tracking and just general deer behavior knowledge and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I get a lot of people now who call me to ask me questions, but when I have a question, this is who I call.
Okay.
And he's increased my learning curve by 10, 20 years probably by me being able to pick his brain and ask him things. And I just tell the quick story of how I actually met Marty. And it was interesting. So I guess it was 4 deer seasons ago now that my oldest son, Dake, shot a really nice buck in a field across from our house, shot it with a 7 mag. He calls me. He's like, "Dad, I just shot that buck. We knew he was there. He was out in the field chasing does. We had him on camera." And so he shoots this deer. If y'all hear heavy breathing, it's not me. There's a dog on my lap. So
yeah.
Just so you know.
Miss America's in here with us today. So.
Yeah. Hey, pretty girl. Anyway, so he calls me. He's like, "Dad, I just shot this deer. Or I shot at it. I think I missed it." I said, "Well, what did it do?" He said, "First time I shot it, just squatted down." And I said, "It didn't run off?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, what did it do the second time you shot?" He said, "It just kind of walked off in the woods real slow." And I'm like, "Well, Dake, there's not a deer in the United States, especially a mature buck, that if you shoot at it 2 times with a high-powered rifle, it's probably just going to walk out of the field." Like, he's not. And so I get there, I start looking, and finally I find some just real watery, dark, didn't even really look like blood. It was it was like intestinal blood. And so we knew not to track it that night. A buddy of mine had a kind of a heat infrared or heat sensing. It wasn't even a scope. It was more of just almost like a rangefinder kind of thing.
Like a
monocular kind of thing. Yeah. And if my words don't come real easy, I left the church at like 11 something last night. So it's just sleep deprivation. But anyway, we kind of messed around with that, but we knew not to push the deer. Well, the next day I actually took off work. He shot it on a Sunday afternoon. I took off work, took my GPS out there. I grid this whole cutover, but this cutover is so thick you can't hardly see in front of your face. And I looked, and even one time I know I smelled this deer, but I couldn't find him. And so by this time, 24 hours has gone by. The next day, Tuesday, and Dake had called Marty, and Marty was like, Dake, I just can't get there. And he had a couple of bulldogs that he tracked with. One was Buster, who passed this season, and another one named Gypsy, who he still has. And a friend of mine had seen him on Facebook, and that's how we knew to call Marty. And so he had called, and Marty was out of town, and he said, I don't have anybody that I can even send them with. And so Dake asked me the next day, he said, "You think I should try to call Marty again?" And I said, "Dake, the only thing he could tell you is there ain't no chance, or no, I can't come." And we didn't know each other at the time. And so, but Dake called him, and he said, "If that deer's gut shot, like, you think he is, there's a chance we can find him." And so he sent a couple of his guys over with his dogs that evening. And now Dake had shot this deer on Sunday at, I don't know, it's probably around 5:30. Marty's guys get there with his dogs. It's probably around 6 o'clock. and it was right
after dark.
Yeah, it was right after dark. We get over there, and
what day was this that they came?
This is Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, so this is literally going to be almost exactly 48 hours after he shot the deer. So this is the most incredible. This is why I'm tracking today, right? Is because when they got there, they turned Buster and Gypsy out, and they go around and they do their business, and then they said, "All right, let us walk them in here, and we'll see what happens." Well, as soon as they said, "Let us walk them in here," I text two of my friends, and I said, "Hey, dog's on the ground. We're, and so just letting them know." Well, then 11 minutes later, I texted them back and said, "Deer found." So they found that deer in 11 minutes after it'd been 48 hours. And it was gut shot, but still, and that's going to put out some scent. Right. But still, I was mind blown by how that happened. And I told my sons and I told my wife that day, I said, I'm going to have something that will do that.
Yeah.
And because I've grown up having hunting dogs. I love hunting. I love dogs. So since I was 10 years old, I've had beagles for, rabbit hunting, deer hunting, running deer with dogs. I've had all kinds of hunting dogs. And when I saw that, I was like, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I'm going to have something that'll do that. Well, they kind of are like, yeah, whatever, as they usually do with things I say. And, but that was on Tuesday. Friday morning, I left my house about 4 a.m. and went to Elberton and got the Catahoula I have now named Remo.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so that's how I got into it. And I've been doing it now for 3 years. I always mess with Marty and tell him he's the GOAT. Not the GOAT as in the animal, of course, but the greatest of all time. He's the OG. How long have you been tracking? Since 2000 or 2004?
Started tracking deer for hire. We track deer. We got started a little different method than probably most people do, but we started tracking deer for hire in 2006. I think.
Yeah. And so again, for me, Marty's just an incredible guy. If you get to know him, you're going to love him because he's just that type of guy. He is what he is. There's no airs. He's just a good guy. And then the other thing is I've just had a lot of fun learning from him and now doing something that I absolutely love because of that night. And he wasn't even there, but it was through that we got connected. And so I've been really excited to have him come join us and be able to share. But, and one thing I'll say about Marty, and I find this to be true with most of the trackers I know, but one thing that is really true of Marty is it's not just about him tallying a number. We all keep up with our numbers, right? Yeah. We all like to see what, brag about, right? we all like to see how many we find and compare it to the year before. And, how did the year go? But the biggest thing for Marty is I want to help you find a deer. Oh yeah. And I can tell you a lot of the tracks that I go on is because somebody called Marty and he couldn't go, or he was watching the Georgia game. Or whatever, and I don't like the Bulldogs quite as much as he does.
Or it's dark.
Or it's dark, yeah. Marty told me.
I'm too old for that.
Marty told me this year, he said, I said something about, why don't you come, let's go track this deer together, because it was not too far from his house or something, and I said, why don't we go track this one together tonight? And he goes, you lost me at tonight.
Yep.
He said, I've been doing it long enough now. He's like, I like daytime. And so, but he does. He still goes and gets them at night too. But he's just been a real blessing in my life and become a friend. You mentioned for hire, but I know you don't do it for money. You do it for the love of what you do and helping people.
Well, we started off tracking. So we had we shot soybean fields at night for deer, and soybeans in the summer before they dry back, waist high, chest high. So you shoot a deer and it falls, you can't find it. So I had a bulldog that I caught hogs with, and I started using him. We had a bell on his collar around his neck. So you could listen to that bell and you could tell when he got the deer, it changes. And so that's how we started tracking deer with this bulldog. And I found 208 deer with that dog, not including those soybean field deer. From I think I started, like I said, 06 or 07 in that range, somewhere with him, and he died December the 11th, 2016, I think. So he and I made a lot of steps together, a lot of steps.
Yeah. Well, tell us his name. Axel. Yes, that Axel was he was kind of renowned in the area. He was well known.
Really a special dog. He was very intelligent. Had drive. I don't think I've ever owned another dog, hog dog or anything else that had that kind of drive. Which are two of the qualities I really like. But when he was young, he was as fast. We used to go to a lot of wild hog field trials, and they have a drag race. And so he never lost the drag race. Like, he was the fastest dog there. And so when you run a deer that's wounded and say you know, whatever, when you run a deer, he got a lot of deer just simply because he ran them so long and so hard. Like a deer that's barely wounded, he would wind up with a deer where a lot of dogs won't, just because he just run it in the ground. Yeah. And, man, I loved it. Because people would always call, and it's always the same story. I got lung blood, and I got this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And so, I got a big chunk of rib bone, and I'm like, oh, okay, rib bone. So, I mean, you got rib bone, you're not looking for the deer, right?
That's right.
So, anyway, so then when I'm 4 miles down the road, and I call them and say, I got your deer, and they like, oh, no, not my deer. I'm like, oh, yeah, got your deer.
Yeah.
So, and I tell them where I'm at, drop a pin. I realized I figured out how to do that stuff. Now my kids taught me. So,
yeah.
But used to, back then it was a lot harder. I mean, I'd had to explain to somebody where I was at.
Yeah.
And man, it was interesting.
Yeah. I remember the days when we would run deer with dogs, just hunting, you know, and not tracking, but hunting deer. And I remember it was a lot different, you know, I guess, gosh, how long was it? 30 years ago.
Yeah. No GPS till about 07 or 08, maybe.
And we had the beep collars, is
right.
What I call them.
You walk out there with your big old TV antenna.
That's what it looked like. You just ripped the old TV antenna off the roof, and we're out there.
That was telemetry.
That was the only thing I hated about dog hunting.
Yeah,
and you got shot at.
Yeah, I mean that was the first time you scared the crap out of you, but then
you enjoy that.
And then once it happened a few times, you're just like, that's normal.
Yeah,
you just hear buckshot coming through the woods.
Yeah,
just jump in the ditch. It's okay.
I worked with a guy a couple of years ago who got shot.
Yeah,
buckshot. And I won't go in detail because he was hitting some.
Yeah.
Pretty bad places.
He got hit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But he had like 6, 7.
Oh my gosh!
Buckshot pellets went in him.
Yeah,
he was really bad places.
Daggone, man.
Bad.
But his son shot him.
Oh man!
Just spun and shot the deer, and the guy was standing on top of his dog box and knocked him off the dog box and everything. It was bad.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. When I was growing up, it was a lot of fun, and even as I got older. But I remember we used to I'd turn 10 dogs out. Right. Without a collar,
We did that.
We didn't have collars. Well, we had collars. We had collars on the dogs, but we never had tracking collars.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about it. I had a guy. We're a Garmin dealer, so we had a guy come in last year wanting to get some new tracking collars. I asked him what he was using them for, and he said they run deer dogs. I was like, man, I never even. Man, we'd have been dangerous with this. I mean, the deer would have had no chance if we'd have known exactly where the dog was. Because you're going off of, just listening.
Yeah.
We had one dog. We had a beagle. His name was Raymond. That dog, he got bit by a rattlesnake one summer, and he lost on one side. He lost like everything on his face right there. And like when he would just be sitting there, you could see his teeth and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But that dog, he was tough, man. And it's like after that happened, it's like he was better.
Yeah.
I mean, and he would run. And I mean, he would come back. He was one of those that would come back to you. But if the deer was still there, I mean, he wasn't stopping. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. But anyway.
We turned out all those dogs. We didn't know, and nobody cared back then. No, it was a lot different. And then we got the beep collars.
Yep.
And like you said, like you out there with a.
I was the doctor with that thing for a while. Yeah. I mean, in hog hunting, everything's about speed. Especially when I started, we ran greedy dogs, which meant more times than not they caught the hog, regardless of where he was at. So it was important to get there as quickly as possible. So it paid to be good with that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you learn how to adjust it so that, by what, number you're on, about how far.
Turn it on, hit a few beeps and know which way you need to go and get closer. Right.
And of course, tracking, and hog hunting, I never did that. Once I got into it, we had the GPS and that kind of thing.
Well, when you also learn, like with GPS, I find deer I wouldn't find any other way because, the dog does his part, but you help the dog as well. It's a lot of it's handler too. I can look on my GPS and say, well, the dog's struggling in this area or whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios that play out. But, you can help that dog.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is GPS is a game changer.
Oh, absolutely. Gosh. Yeah, if something happened to the satellites tomorrow, I'd sell all the dogs I got. I'm out. Yeah. I quit.
Yeah. At this point, if we never knew, it's kind of like if you never knew what these donuts sitting in front of me tasted like, you wouldn't have a problem with
the box could just stay closed.
But now that I know what a donut tastes like it's hard to not eat them. Same thing with the GPS. If I'd never known what it was, then I'd be fine. But I don't know how anybody tracked like we do today before you had some type of tracking.
We would run coon dogs with no kind of tracking.
Oh yeah, we did the same.
And
thing.
That's the same thing. That's like running.
It's
hogs.
helpful when you got an open dog like a hound, because you know at least which direction he's going.
Oh yeah.
But I turn out a bulldog to track deer, so I started with the bell. So I know which way he's going
because they're not really barking.
Right, they don't bark.
No, they don't
bark at all. Mm-mm. So he gets out of sight, and you have no idea if he circled back behind you. He might be 4 miles. I had actually had that happen to me this year. I had a collar quit on a dog. I almost lost my gypsy dog because of it. And man, it's different.
I guess I never thought about that because with that, like with that hound dog, he's rattling the trees.
Right.
Once he gets in there and he's on a coon, you just go to the
sound.
Go to the bar, yeah.
And even if he goes 2 miles, you can be going in the direction he's going all the while because you can hear him.
Right. Yeah.
Silent dogs. That's different.
And like with Marty's too, his don't bark. Yours don't bark on the trail or when they get to the deer because both of his dogs, Buster passed, but then now you got the gypsy, and you got the blue bulldog. Yeah. And so, but when they get there, they're not barking, they're attacking. If that deer's alive, they're going to grab him and hold him until Marty gets there. And for me, I do have Remo who bays. So that's helpful.
Right.
And I know
but he bays once he finds the deer. Yes, that's the only time he's going to bark.
He will not bark unless he's looking at the deer. And the deer's alive.
How'd you teach him to do that? Y'all just kind of had a real good meeting one day?
Yeah, I just told him, I said, Remo, son, if you want to hang around here, then you cannot bark until you see this deer.
That's right.
And he's done it. No, it's just what he did. He
learns.
He's a smart dog.
Yeah.
And he learned, and that's just what he does. Now I've got a bulldog, and I've got a blackmouth cur that I take too, and he's a puppy. When they get there is no barking.
That dog is going to be good, though. That blackmouth that you got.
He might be special. So he ended up doing real well at the end of the year.
That's the key is the learning curve on a dog. So in hog hunting, I've had dogs that start really good and just kind of plateau. Or the best hog dog I ever had started really slow. Like he was probably over 2 years old, and I was like, I don't know about this dog. Man, he wound up being phenomenal. But the learning thing, like you were talking about with Remo, the Axel dog I had when he got old, and like I guess he just figured this thing out. So he would, if he had a deer caught, he would bay it. Because it might take me 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, just depending on how far he is and the situation. But he would bay it, and then when I got there, he'd catch. And one of the coolest things that ever happened to me with that dog, I have a bunch of really neat stories, but one of them, he tracked the deer way off, showed tree. The creek was flooded, Took me probably 20 or 30 minutes to get there. He was like 2.5 miles. So when I get there to him, the creek's flooded, so I'm sloshing through water. I hear him barking. Well, I get within 150 yards, he quits barking. So as I'm coming through the water, it's kind of an open bottom. I get where I can see him out in the creek, and he's on a stump, just like huddled, or like his front legs wrapped around it, like he's hanging on. He's old. He's kind of wore out at this point in his life and career. Anyway, so when I get to him, he's not barking anymore. He's just laying there. So I called him. I told him to come to me. I thought he's lost the deer. He had him called in the creek. The dogs wore out. The deer got off, whatever, in the story. So I called. He wouldn't come to me. So, and he minded really well. Like I could, whatever I said, he would do. And anyway, but he wouldn't come to me. And I called him 2 or 3 times. I was frustrated because I'm like, nah, and I got to strip down and go out here across this creek. And it's cold. I mean, it's deer season, it's cold. So I go out there, and right when I get to him to grab his collar, I'm like chest deep water. I can see white under the water, and the deer, he's there with the deer. He wouldn't leave it.
Yeah.
So he knew that deer, and that's what he was doing. He was letting me know where he was at. And then when he heard me sloshing in the water, that he quits because he knew I'm gonna find him. He probably didn't understand the finer points of GPS, but he knew I'm coming.
But he probably could have read it.
That guy's coming at some point. But yeah, and I mean, if he'd have came to me, I'd have just missed that deer. I'd had no idea the deer was under the water.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, and because you have the camaraderie with the dogs.
Oh yeah,
and you learn their behavior,
right.
And you can tell. Like for Remo now, if Daisy, the bulldog I got from you, she's a white bulldog, or the blackmouth cur, his name's Crook. If they find that deer, they're gonna be there. They're gonna eat on it till I get there.
Right.
Remo will go find that deer. He'll sit there for a second, and on the GPS it'll show tree, and he'll sit there for a few minutes or a minute or two,
right.
And then he comes back to me and walks me to the deer.
Right.
And so every one of them's different. But if he shows tree for a few seconds, 30 seconds to a minute, and then he comes back to me, that deer's wherever he stopped.
That's part of the reason that I like the bulldogs. So the Buster dog I had, he would go to it for a long time. If the deer was not gut shot, if he was just whatever shot, he would go to the deer and he'd leave it. And a couple of deer almost missed. Well, I may have missed some deer early in his tenure, but as time went on, I realized what he was doing. Now, if it's gut shot, he'd stay with it. And I don't understand exactly why some of that was. Maybe he's chewing it, whatever. I'm not sure. But anyway, so each dog is different. But the reason that I like the bulldogs is because it eliminates some of the baying, and hunters want to get in and try to shoot a deer that's wounded, and that's dangerous. And it's dangerous for you, it's dangerous for them, it's dangerous for the deer, the dog, everybody involved. So if I got a bulldog and he'll catch that deer, I can get my hands on him. I can end him up. So,
and that's the thing too that I have to do a lot of times is, be very clear when we get there that I'm the one who carries the gun.
Right.
Because if that deer's not caught good or whatever, then I don't want somebody shooting my dogs.
Right.
And one of the things Marty taught me is like, you just got to tell them the way it's going to work. And if they don't want to do that, then give them somebody else's number or whatever. But, and I've had some people that kind of were like, well, I mean, I'm not going to shoot. I'm like, I know you're not going to shoot my dog because you're not going to take a gun. And that one guy get out with a tall boy Bud Light and a shotgun. And I'm like,
another reason I don't like track deer at night.
Yeah, that's not going to work. And so, and he goes, oh, I wasn't going to shoot the deer with the gun. I'm like, well, what, was you going to swing it like a baseball bat? What were you going to do with it?
This is my machete.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
And so, but yeah, and it's interesting. But you run into all kinds of people,
right?
And most of them are great. Yep. But then every now and then you run into that turd. You know what I mean?
Yep, 100%. It really makes it difficult. And I've learned through the years, like I've been doing this a while. I don't know. I wish I'd totaled it up, but I've probably found about 600 deer.
Yeah.
And anyway, but I've done enough and run into enough people. Like a lot of times I catch those on the phone call, and I've just at the point in my life, if you're that guy, I'm just gonna pass you along. I'm gonna try to help you.
He's gonna send them to me.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna send them to Brandon. Like, hey, Brandon, I got it. And most of the time I say, hey, like, I just can't. And if he wants to do it, fine. If he don't, fine.
Yeah.
But I'm just not. I mean, so I don't have I love it. But I'll go quicker to an 8-year-old than I will a 150-inch deer. I mean, it's more important to me. I love people. Inevitably, when I find a deer, no matter how big he is, what do they say? I thought he was bigger than that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if he's 150 deer.
There's always some ground shrinkage.
Always ground shrinkage, yep.
Well, and the two things, and I've told y'all this before, but the two things everybody tells you when they call you is he's a good one.
Yeah.
And I hit him hard.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times he mule kicked. I know I hit him in the heart. He mule kicked, and I'm like, you might not even hit that deer, buddy.
That's usually more times than not when I see that. That's some kind of front end damage on that mule kick. I know people shoot them all the time. They mule kick and they're dead right there. I get that. But when you're on the phone with me, more times than not, he's not hit well. Yes. On occasion there is. I found a deer this year that was 39 feet. I mean,
they just couldn't find him.
39
feet.
Right. Yeah, he just tumbled off in the woods and just thick. There's no blood. They don't know where the deer went. No idea.
I found one that went, literally 20 yards, and it was a good friend of mine. And we're out there walking to where he said the deer went, and the dogs are showing treed over there to my left about 20 yards. And I look over there, and there's this big 8-point laying over on the side, and I'm like, there's your deer right there. And he's like, dang, I didn't think that deer went that way. Yeah. And so, that was the easiest track I've ever done. We didn't ever even go to where he thought the deer was. Best
dog man I've ever known in my life. A good friend of mine called me, and you had to know this guy, great guy. Forgot more about dogs than I'll ever know. This guy's, matter of fact, his birthday should be the next day or two. He should be 78.
Wow.
And probably still hunting. I hadn't talked to him in a few months. But anyway, called me one day to track his grandson's deer. And you would have to know this guy to know the amount of pride he had to swallow to do that.
Yeah.
Because he had a few dogs that would track deer and all that. But it's his grandson's first deer, find this deer. And so I went over there, and they were hunting like a logging road or whatever. And all the deer, there was several deer, and he had shot, and they all ran to the left. Well, they couldn't find any blood to the left. Well, when I got there and started walking down the logging road, I saw the deer. The hit deer had ran straight down the logging road, 50 yards, laying in the but he weren't looking for it there,
Yeah.
And man, it got off with him. And I know it did, and I didn't. Obviously he's a great friend of mine. I think a lot of him. But it's just that easy sometimes. Yeah. If you're looking in the wrong place, your eyes won't see it if it's there.
Yeah, I've you say that, we've got a guy that hunts on our place, and he called me one evening and said that he had killed a deer, and so we went to help him or whatever, and we rode down there on side by side, and as soon as we pull up, the lights of the side by side hit the eyes of the deer.
Yeah.
And he had gotten down out of a stand. He's 84 at this point.
Yeah.
He said, well, I don't know if I got him or not. And he said, when my arrow went through him, he said it slowed down a lot when it hit the deer, and it just kind of fell out the other side. I said, well, it went through him. I said, that's the goal. That's what we want. He said, yeah. He said he had just gotten down. He said, he was looking at his arrow. He said, I guess I got pretty good blood. I said, the deer's right there. Yeah. He said, what?
Yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah. But
it happens to everybody too. That's something I know. Obviously y'all, Brandon, bow hunts. I'm guessing that y'all do too.
So no, I don't bow hunt at all.
He just sells them.
I just sell them.
There you go.
Yeah.
You go sit in a tree for a couple hours.
Hey, sometimes that's what you need to do in life.
Yeah. Sometimes the best way to ruin an afternoon is shoot something.
Yeah. Right. Well, I very seldom deer hunt, but when I do, that's usually what I wind up doing. I'm like, man, if I shoot this deer, I gotta go find it and clean it and do this. And I'm like, nah. Yeah. I just won't shoot it.
That's right. Dove, how many did you kill this year?
I ended up killing 5.
5? Mm-hmm. And John, what? Dang, I didn't mean to bring that. Well, I actually did mean to bring that back up.
I can't wait until he calls me one day and says, "Hey, can you come help me find this deer?"
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's right.
I can't wait.
Right.
I can't wait.
So,
And I'm gonna walk 10 feet and be like, "Brandon, this ain't the one you killed because I know you missed, but somebody killed a deer right here." You know?
oh gosh, but that does happen. One of two things: somebody inevitably every year, somebody will think that's not the deer I shot.
Oh yeah.
And then
I found wrong deer, like legitimate wrong deer.
yes,
So one of the deer I found, guy called me. This was so with archery people, it's different. Most of the time they're better hunters, but a lot of times that pride, like I know what I saw, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But this guy was a bow hunter. I could tell being on the phone with him. Now he shot the deer with a rifle, but he was a bow hunter. I could tell being on the phone with him, he's very experienced. Probably wouldn't have taken the call otherwise. Long story short, I go, there's one drop of blood. Put the dog on it. We work down in the bottom. The dog jumps a deer, runs it down, catches it. I run out there, stick it, kill the deer, go get the guy, come back. He's like, that's not the deer I shot. And I'm like, okay. Well, and the deer's in velvet. So this is gun
Like
season.
September.
And
Wait,
October. Yeah, this is
Oh wow.
second week of
Here?
gun season. Yeah.
What? Yeah.
He's missing his
male parts.
yeah, his male
I've
parts.
seen
There you
that
go.
too. Yep.
So when I roll the deer over, he's got a big gaping wound in his chest where he's been shot, but it's old. Probably my guess is archery and it's rotted out and he's kept it clean because it wasn't oozing, but anyway, long story short, so I'm like, this is not the deer that he shot a couple of hours
like
ago.
legit, it wasn't the deer.
Wasn't the deer.
Wow.
But so I told the guy, because he pretty experienced, and I was like, look, the deer you shot is more than likely going to bed where we jumped this deer. I mean, it's just they're kind of creatures of habit and they tend to follow trends and stuff. So I said, check back in a few days, whatever. So he called me 1 day short of 3 weeks, 20 days. He called me and said, I found that deer. And I was like, yeah, where was he? And he's like, he's still alive, but he's still bleeding. And I'm like, no, not still bleeding. I mean,
Yeah.
3 weeks, bro, he's not bleeding. So anyway, but he was insistent. And like I said, the guy's pretty knowledgeable. So it was on a Friday afternoon. I'd got off work. I was like, what the heck? So I took the dogs, went, this is Buster. Took him, went, put down. Sure enough, there's blood there. So as soon as I put down, the dog goes 120 yards or so and catches the deer. The deer's not far. Well, when he shot him that morning, he had grazed. He shot him quarter in two, and he had missed the close shoulder, grazed under the deer's belly. You could see where the bullet had run, and hit his back leg about the knee and broke it on the far side. And so that bone in the bottom of that leg was sharp, and it was still poking in enough that, I mean, he weren't bleeding, but it was a drop. It was fresh blood.
It just wasn't healing good.
Right, it wasn't healing right.
Yeah.
And probably wasn't going to in that scenario. But yeah, so I caught him. I killed deer, and that's 3 weeks on a track.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
That ain't the kind of stuff that happens
man.
every day, But and I got me and my wife talk about all the time. She wants me to write a book. I'm like, man, I don't think that's in my wheelhouse. But
You tell the stories, I'll write it. How about that?
yeah, I love it. And I love it 'cause
described.
I would love for people to hear these kinds of things because they're unusual. I mean, it's not typical stuff.
No.
And it's
But
been a lot of fun.
that's what makes you fall in love with it.
Right.
Is because stuff happens that you are like, that was cool.
Right.
You know, and I've had a couple that the best ones are when the dogs catch that deer and you take off running and the hunter is like, what the crap's happening?
Yeah.
And then they come with you.
Yeah.
And you get there and you grab the deer and you stab it and kill it. And you turn around and their eyes are like big as silver dollars. And I had one guy last year, he had told me, he said, I shot this deer. And I said,
Good shot.
oh, it's a good
deer.
one.
Good.
And I hit him
lung,
hard.
blood, and rib bone.
Yeah, lung, blood, and rib bone. And so he said, I shot this deer. You know, I know he went, and it was a great morning too. I was actually in a tree when he called. He said, I know he only went about 120 yards. I heard him crash. And he said, but it's thick. I don't want to miss him. Could you bring your dogs? And this is a good friend of mine. He said, I'd love to see the dogs work too. I said, yeah, I'll bring them. Well, I took Remo and Daisy and I put them out. There wasn't hardly any blood, which was unusual because of what it ended up being. But they go in there and they get to 100, 150, right about 200 yards. Remo starts baying. And I get in there and Daisy's trying to catch this deer. Well, he has shot both front legs on this deer. And this deer is still, he is still very alive. Right. And he's trying to kill Daisy.
And not happy,
so he shot him to the point that like cut him off or broke him
almost.
Off? Yeah,
they were both broke.
Yeah, it was basically he was done.
But he was just.
But that deer could have lived,
he would have suffered. Yeah, he would have suffered for a while.
Probably coyotes. I figure bulldogs can catch him. Coyotes can kill him.
Oh yeah.
I see a lot of stuff with in different magazines and stuff where coyotes catch deer and people are like they're predation or what. They're not. I promise you, there's never been a coyote or a group of coyotes that wants to catch an unwounded 150-pound deer. That doesn't happen. Fawns, yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But that buck that's 150 plus.
Even that doe that's 120 pounds, they don't want to mess with that doe
I use two bulldogs typically for this reason, but two bulldogs have their hands full.
Yes.
And I've seen dogs catch and kill coyotes. You know what I mean?
Right,
like, so there's a different level there.
Yeah, and so anyway, Remo starts baying. I take off running. He comes behind me, and they ended up finally catching him. He broke and ran. They finally catch him or bay him up in a road. I get there. I was going to shoot him, and I've killed one deer that we've tracked with a pistol, and that was because he was swimming away from me this year in a pond. The others killed with a knife, which is what Marty does, and that's why I do what I do, is because that's what he does. And so anyway, they get in the road. I pull my gun out to shoot the deer, and then the bulldog catches him. So I put my gun back, pull my knife out. Well, then she's holding on to him, and she ain't but 35 pounds. Right. She's just gritty. And so he drags her, literally is dragging her off into the swamp or into the creek. Right. And so I dropped my knife, and I'll go in there with the gun. At this point, I'm like, I'm tired of it. This has been going on for 10 minutes. And so I'm like, I go in there, and the deer finally, I get a shot, and I think I shot him right in the side of the head with a .22 Magnum. Eyes rolled back. He fell over. I was like, all right, that's done. And I'm sweated down. It's the kind of early season, and I'm like, so I'm going to get my knife. And so I walk out in the road to get my knife, bend down to pick it up, and the hunter, he starts, Brandon. I turn around, the deer's back on his feet going again. And the bulldog's got him again, trying to hold him. And so I just went running. And by this time, you probably don't do this, Marty, because you're a better human being than I am. But I just got mad. Like, I just get mad at it.
No, I never get mad.
Yeah.
It's not in my
It's not in your blood. Well, I finally just go, and I'm like, heck with this. And I threw the gun down and just, I'm like,
why are you throwing your tools in the dirt?
Because
that's two tools you done threw in the dirt.
Well, because at this point I'm like, heck with the gun. Like it ain't getting it strangle this deer. And I've actually got a picture he took of me on that deer killing it. But after I killed the deer, I turned around, and his eyes, I swear they were as big as the bottom of this coffee cup. And he looked at me, and I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but you can kind of fill in the blanks. He goes, I ain't never seen no crap like this. And we get in the truck, and he's like, that's the most exhilarating thing I've ever been a part of.
It's adrenaline, man. It's that's where hog hunting is the same way. Yeah. And people don't understand it. And a lot of people are hog hunting, and they'll tag along. But there's that step between getting to a hog that's bayed, a big hog. There's a space in there, a couple of feet, to where you have to commit to put your hands on him. There's nothing in the world that's adrenaline like that to me. And the deer's the same way. Like, there's that point where you commit, because there's a point where you still have, you can disengage.
Yep.
But when you put your hands on him,
you better
there's no more disengaging. It's you and him, and you got to take care of business. And that's a lot of adrenaline. You talking about the hunters, and that is part of it. I guess that's pride probably playing in or whatever. Like, I enjoy that part of it. The track that I took this year where I almost lost Gypsy, those guys, I had tracked deer a couple of times before, and live deer, and they had been with me. That's what anyway. So when I get there, it's in the evening, and they've been enjoying the evening. And one of them's like, "Hey, there's Tarzan." So they called me Tarzan. And so anyway, just stuff like that. And that adds, there's adrenaline. There's that part, I guess, of your pride that plays into it too, of somebody recognizing what a cool thing this is,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun to be able to experience those things.
So you've been doing this since 2006. So what you're saying is now you got people that make bad shots on deer just because they want you to come out and jump on the
So
deer.
I got a really good friend in Savannah that hunts a place. As a matter of fact, I talk about tracking deer at night. This is a guy, not a lot of people, but he calls me, I go. Like, I don't send anybody unless I'm not there, but I'll go. A guy named Ray Darley.
Yeah,
and,
I met Ray.
That's
I've
right.
tracked a couple of him because
That's
you were
right.
out.
That's right.
Yep, Ray's a good guy.
Ray's a great guy, and so Ray will call me, and like usually for the deer season, I'll text Ray and I'll be like, "Man, I'm starting to wonder if we're not friends anymore. I haven't heard anything from you."
We were in that text thread, and y'all were going back and forth. Yeah.
That's right. I give him a hard time, and and that's kind of part of it too, is you build relationships through the years. So through 20 years of tracking deer, and I build a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
And I like Brandon, and but I got tons of relationships.
So you're saying I'm just one of many.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it. I thought I was special.
Yeah. Well, not everybody tracks with my breed of dogs and all too. So actually, the blue dog I've been using is actually a litter mate brother to the what's her name?
Daisy, the white bulldog I got. Yeah,
white dog. So yeah, but he's got way less experience. I just started him this year, so
yeah. Well, Ray's a good guy. I went and tracked a doe for him last year. That I think you were out of town, and it was a cool one too. But he called me, and I was probably 400 yards in there, and he was like, "Just come on out, Brandon. It ain't, I hate to leave a deer, but I don't want you having to, he's just super nice guy." And about the time I hung up the phone, Remo started baying, and I was able to get that one. But then that drag, and it was a doe too, so what, it's harder to drag a doe to me than a buck for sure. And I think I drug that deer about 400 or 500 yards. So
I ain't dragging deer anymore.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
You got dove. You ain't got to.
That's why I had kids. Yeah.
I ain't dragging them anymore. I'm cutting them up.
Yeah.
I will not.
Go ahead and tell the story.
No,
of how
I'm not.
miserable it was.
I will say this, and I don't always carry my 4-wheeler, but through hog hunting, there's nowhere that 4-wheeler won't go.
Yeah.
Like everybody's like, yeah, but you don't understand. This is thick. I'll put it there.
Yeah.
It'll go.
Yeah.
And it keeps you from dragging. And a lot of times, if I know I got a deer that's going to be alive or different things, like that, I'll carry my 4-wheeler and I'll haul a deer out for somebody because it's. So
I would
much
absolutely love to see you take a 4-wheeler in some spots on my property where I've killed deer.
He'll go. I've been hog hunting. I promise you, like, you ain't seen thick until you've hog hunted. Because a hog, when he bays up, it's not out in the middle of the road, and it's nasty. Now, that being said, this year's different. Like, we caught a hog, bull hog, about 175 pounds 2 weekends ago, and me and the guy we sat on the hill and plotted for about 2 hours on how to go get him because of all the trees down.
Because of the daggum trees,
Right, because of the storm, right. Because you get in a creek bottom, you cross the creek, but there's so many trees down. And when they start dying a little bit, you can break the tops and all out of them with the 4-wheeler. But right now,
you can't do nothing with them right now.
Right.
Some of the trees are just big.
Big, right.
I mean, they might be
right.
3 foot across.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. I mean, it is heartbreaking to go to some of these creek bottoms. Right
It is.
It is absolutely heartbreaking to go down in there and look and go up and stand up on a tree that's
100 years old.
Yeah.
at least 100 years old.
Yeah.
I was on one. I went through a place the other day, and I was shocked that this place got hit because it's close to here. Like when you get over towards Toombs County, Tattnall County, stuff like that, like you expect to see it over there. Right. You get up towards Evans, you expect to see it up there because that's just kind of the path of that storm.
Right.
And we got a little bit here, here and there. But anyway, I went through there the other day, and I was like, man, I've hunted here before.
It's just leveled.
I mean, I remember coon hunting down in there when I was in high school.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that's when I fell in love with dogs.
Right.
Was running.
You from Bullock?
Yeah, running deer hounds and running coon hounds, and that's when I fell in love with dogs, and then I started bird hunting and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm chin deep in loving dogs.
So the funny thing, like for my hunting, so my dad doesn't hunt at all. So my brother and I are both real outdoorsy type folks. Now he likes to fish and stuff, and mostly I think his bigger thing is probably duck hunting. But he's killed some really, really fine deer too. But our dad doesn't hunt. So I had some buddies that started deer hunting or that were deer hunting, you know, back in the early 80s. I mean, we just were starting a deer season in Trackin County. So anyway, long story short, I learned my dad, he didn't care if we hunted. So he'd let us go hunting. So when I got a little older, like in high school, my dad's a workaholic. Like he wants to work all day. He wants to cut firewood, whatever. Like we busy, but he didn't care if I hunted. So there was a lot of days that I would go to the deer stand and lay down and go to sleep on the ground. just to not have to
work.
Was how my hunting started. And so, I mean, not always.
Did your dad ever know that?
I told him that, later. So, not then, obviously. But,
you ain't doing that crap, are you? Oh my gosh! So you're a first generation hunter now.
Yep.
So, did your grandpa hunt or anything? I mean, so you're like you and your brother, just one brother, or
I just have one brother. Yeah. So he's 5 years younger than me, and he didn't hunt a lot as a kid. Actually, when he was probably 12 or 13, I had a 30-30, and he was going hunting one evening, and it went off, and he shot a hole in the house. And I don't think he picked up a gun for 6 or 7 years.
How old was he?
He was probably 12 or 13.
Okay.
And you had to decock it with your thumb.
It was a lever
action, right?
Yeah.
No safeties or anything like that. So I don't think he touched a gun for quite a few years after that. And when I started hog hunting, I don't remember if he was in college over here. He graduated from Georgia Southern. And he started messing around doing that. And anyway, I don't know exactly how his hunting journey went per se, but that's when I guess he started hunting probably around college age.
So 19, 20, 21, somewhere in there is when he really kind of got.
I started when I was 13. I hunted an entire year, deer hunted an entire year, and never saw a deer, which wasn't all that uncommon in the 80s, you know, because they brought deer into Trackin County in 1979. And they dropped some out in a couple of different places, and you can look that kind of stuff up. But anyway, so when I started hunting, you could only kill one antler deer and one antlerless deer, and the doe, there's only 4 or 5 days a year that you could shoot a doe. And so the first year I didn't see any. The second year, and I'm pretty sure this was illegal, but I killed 3 deer opening day. Didn't realize that I had killed the third one at the time. It was in cut corn, and when she fell, I couldn't see her. But it was a doe and 2 yearlings. And that was the first deer I ever killed. I killed him 3 with a lever action 30-30. I was a rifleman. Had to reload.
There you go. Man, that's good stuff. So when you started tracking deer, basically the way you got into stabbing them versus shooting them is because you had been hog hunting. Right. And that's how you did hog hunting.
Well, the bulldog, so I've always used the bulldog. Thing. So when he catches a live deer, he's hard to shoot. I mean,
well, you don't want to shoot your dog.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, like, so
they're not standing there just like, hey, let's all hang out here. Let me give you a good angle.
They're not saying, hey, let's talk about this. No, that deer is trying to live, and that dog's trying to, make that deer not live, right?
Right.
But, so y'all talk about, whenever you're going on a track, you tell the hunter, leave your gun at the truck. Bring your beer if you got to, but leave your gun at the truck.
I really like to carry somebody with me to talk to them while I'm tracking.
That's 100%.
Okay.
That's why Dake doesn't go with me anymore because he always
knows you're gonna.
He's the distraction, And some people are like they're real understanding where you say, "Hey, let me go in here. I'll call you in a second." That's what a lot of times I'll say. I'll call you in a second.
If I get out of sight, I'm gone.
I'm gone.
Right.
Yes. And I have actually people who would get in the way. I have actually led them 100 yards the other direction, left them and come back and got back on the track.
Right.
Because it's just, they just in the way.
It's hard. Right.
Yeah. And so,
and they have good intentions,
Right.
but you called me for a reason because this is what I do. I know what I'm doing. Let me do it. You know what I mean? I don't mean that.
it's like you've told me, if you could find it, you'd already found it.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me have my shot at it, and let me do it the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
And more time. I mean, I'm sure there's times when I'm wrong, but more times than not, I mean, I've seen it. I've tracked a lot of deer, and still see different things. I mean, like I said, that I'm like, well, I didn't expect that.
So why'd you get into it? I mean, you said you started out, you were hog hunting, which is a lot of fun. I get that, right? That's a lot of fun to go listen. If you listen and you've never gone hog hunting with dogs, you got to do it.
Just don't take PETA with you.
Take them. Yeah, let them see what it's like.
Yeah,
for goodness sakes, and then grill that thing up for them, and
you
know it'll change their life.
Yeah.
All right. But then I guess you were helping a farmer, or were you farming at the time, or when you were doing the?
So we were shooting mostly on a permit at night.
No. It was permit stuff.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So I had a good friend of mine farmed. And we would go shoot their fields and stuff at night. And like I said,
so he put you on your permit. Now, why'd y'all care about getting the deer out of the soybean field?
Meat, because back then I was a young man and had plenty of energy at night and that kind of thing. So I'd butcher 5 or 6 does a night or whatever. I processed my own meat.
Yeah.
So
killed them in the summertime.
Yep, young small family,
and y'all would keep them. Yeah.
Okay. So I butchered. There was years I'd butcher 30 or 40 deer.
Really?
And put them up, give them away. Man, I had plenty of energy. You know what I mean? So just doing stuff to be doing it. Now I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to bed.
Now, was this in Trackin County?
Yeah.
So you go from in your hunting career from, barely or hunting a whole year without seeing deer,
right?
To the deer have gotten so bad that y'all are killing hundreds of deer a year to try to
you're
make
only
a
talking
crop.
So when I started doing that, you're talking about early 2000s. So you're literally from the time they brought the deer into Trackin County, 25 years. 25 years they've gone from you can't kill them because they didn't start 79 hunting them.
Right.
I'm not sure when they started. I think it was 84 or 5, maybe somewhere in that range. And but so
it happened really fast.
Yeah, really fast.
Yeah. And I mean, and
it's poor management practices. I got a degree in field and game preserve management. And it's poor management practices. It's the state. They're slow on everything, and it's not knocking DNR or whatever, but they're slow. I mean, we're going to build a road that we needed 20 years ago, and when we get done with it, we already need another road, right? Yeah. So kind of same thing.
Yep.
All right, so why'd you get into tracking deer?
Well, we're finding them at night, so it's one of these things where people hear. It's word of mouth. People's like, hey, Marty's got a dog that can find a deer.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and man, like literally, I got pictures of the first deer I ever caught alive. Well, that was it for me. Like I had probably found 10 or 12 deer. Like, a couple of does like hit because we did all headshots. So most time the deer would fall right there. That's how you knew you hit it because it fell. And so I had a little experience, and then we'd caught. But the first buck I ever caught, it was like a busted leg. I was in Cedar Grove, probably around, I must have been 06 or 07. I'm not sure. But anyway, and that was it. That was it for me. I was like, oh, this is different. Like it's a whole different type of adrenaline. And a hog, he's dangerous.
In a different way,
right? When I get him on the ground, as long as I don't let him up,
yeah.
Those things do happen on occasion, but as long as I don't let him up, I got him. That deer, you ain't got him. I mean, he's different. I had one tear my shirt off one time. He had been shot and busted his back leg. So when you hold a deer, when you throw him down, as long as you got his front leg, bottom leg, it's kind of like a hog. As long as you got that leg, he can't get up. That's what he uses the post to get up.
Right.
Like now, deer is flexible enough. He can stick his back feet in the ground and get his hips up and stuff like that. But he can also kick you with those back legs.
Yeah.
I mean, he can kick. He can knock bark off your head with those back legs. And so, yeah, it's different. But that's part of the fun. I mean, it's adrenaline caught a bunch in creeks and rivers and ponds and, man, just every which way you can imagine. And
it's funny, Marty, because you've taught me, as I've said, you've taught me so much just in 3 years. And, like, you'd probably saved my life by some of the things you told me, and talking about the deer that tore your shirt off. I had one, actually, it was, I won't call their name, but it was someone who you referred to me. And I've gotten to know them since, and he's done built a dog box for me and some different things. And one that you couldn't go to, so I went to it, and I think it was his nephew had shot a really nice, it was like 19-inch wide, 20-inch wide, 8-point the afternoon before. Right. Went and got there, put the dogs on it, 2.2 miles. They jumped a deer in a cut over creek bottom and ran it about 100 yards. And initially, I always carry Remo, and I carry 2 other dogs because Remo don't catch. Right, he just bays. So I want to have 2 that'll catch. And so he'll catch some, but not much. So initially, all 3 dogs are baying. Right. And I'm like, that ain't good.
That ain't good.
And so I'm running, and well, then all of a sudden, ain't none of the dogs baying. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, they either all dead or they caught. Yeah. Well, I get there and they're caught, but I got another bulldog, the black bulldog. Well, she has got the deer by the throat, but he's got his horns around her and pinning her to the ground where she looks like she's flat as this donut box.
Yeah, yeah.
And if he had brow tines, I'm not sure it wouldn't have killed her. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But I ran by and I grabbed him by the horns on one side to pull him up off of her. Right. And when I did, he started up and threw me over the other side of it. Right. So now I've got this deer and I'm on my back. And this was the most probably vulnerable position I've ever been in.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
And so I've got him on my back and I'm holding onto his horns, and thankfully the dog's held. Right. And so I start to climb back up on to the deer to stab him. And when I do, that back leg comes up, and I had on a flannel shirt. I still got it. I got a picture of it. Ripped it from above my elbow all the way down to the cuff. Yep. And Marty's voice kicks in. Put your leg on his back leg. Yep. And so I get up, and I got my left leg on his left back leg, and I finished him off. Yep. But that's one of those things that I learned from you that
you just learn from experience. That's how I learned. I mean, and that, but it's good to.
But you were able to teach me that. I didn't have to learn it the hard way.
When my brother and I started hog hunting, I mean, we caught hogs. It was dangerous because we didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea what we were doing. And looking back, I'm like, God protects stupid people.
Yes, and I say that all the time. Gosh,
man, but
I have no fear then
about myself. Right? God has helped my stupid self so many times
in way more ways than one.
Yes,
but I've been in that position with flat on my back with a deer in my belly, and me got him by the horns twice.
And then what you gonna do?
And neither time was it all that. I know it sounds like that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, you literally got your hands full.
Right.
Yeah.
But so in the first occasion, I was on the deer, had him where I wanted, and he just kind of bucked, and I was off balance, and I went down, and before I knew it, he was up, and the dog still had him, and I had him by the horns, and he was in my chest, my belly, but he had been shot with a 300 Magnum through both shoulders and through the forward and the brisket. So he didn't have a lot of pushing power. You know what I mean? I wasn't in any danger of being hurt, but it got my attention. This just happened this was for Ray. Ray didn't shoot deer on his property a few years ago. And, but it got my attention, and it made me I'm not 25 anymore. I don't move like that. And I had to be careful with stuff like that, more so than I used to be.
Yeah.
Cause I'm, just get older.
Would you agree with this? Because this is something I don't think we've ever talked about, but I'm much more concerned with a deer's feet than I am his horns.
Oh yeah. I would be concerned with a deer that was hit high shoulder or something to where he's still pretty functional, like a 200-pound, 5.5-year-old deer that had the brow tines. The brow tines is what, rest of the stuff, not real scary. Yeah. Brow tines, if he's got enough strength that he could push. Had a deer, guy was using axle one day, had axle pinned to the ground in a pine field, pretty much had a big row of pine straw pushed up with axle. And when CJ got to him, CJ got the deer by the horns, and he quit with axle and started pushing CJ back.
Yep.
And CJ, smart kid, young kid. I mean, he's not anymore, but I mean, he was a teenager then.
Yeah.
And did a lot of tracking and hog hunting and all this stuff with me. But he just let the deer push him up against the pine tree, and he just stepped around the pine tree and grabbed the deer and pulled the deer to the pine tree, so he had him like that. And the deer couldn't kick him, couldn't drive, couldn't push, couldn't anything. Well, the deer's pushing the tree. And this time, this was a guy we know, he had a shotgun. And
he was able to shoot the deer.
CJ reached down and grabbed the axle and pulled him out of the way.
And I say that. I say I'm much more afraid. I'm much more concerned with where the deer's feet are than the horns. And I got punctured this year, in the elbow by a deer. That was my own fault too, because the deer didn't necessarily do it to me. I did it to myself because I was grabbing one side of his horns to stab him with the other hand, and actually, in me holding the deer, he had a little fork off of his main beam that went in my arm. So,
well, all the times that I've gotten, for the most part, scuffed up with hogs or deer, it's usually been more than anything because of carelessness. You get comfortable. I've done this a long time. I've done it a lot of times, and you get comfortable. And now, as I've gotten older, and I'm not as mobile or whatever as I once was, I'm a little more careful, but there's still those times when I don't see something that I should see, maybe. Yeah. Because when I come in, like anybody's hog hunted and you've done something that's really, really adrenaline filled, I think about high school wrestling when I wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
So initially everything's just chaos. Like you can't hear what people are telling you.
Yeah.
It's just chaos. And it's kind of that way when you go into a deer or a hog or whatever. But as you get experience, I'm calculating when I come in, as soon as I get where I can see, where's the dog caught? What's the deer doing? Where's he hit? Well, you making all these calculations. So as you do that, by the time I get there and put my hands on him, I know what I'm in. Yeah. But sometimes you get careless, and sometimes you think, oh, his front leg's busted, I can twist him. If his left leg's busted, I'm gonna twist him down that way because he'll go down way easier. And sometimes you just miss something, or you get a little careless, and that's how you get hurt.
And another one, I always have told my boys, if you're with me and something happens and you have to deal with this deer, don't be on his feet side. Yeah. But then there's times where I'll find myself, I'm doing exactly what I told them not to do.
You gotta do it. I have killed deer with them standing. Like I never even put my hands on him. Just took and stuck him in just like you shoot him. I mean, right behind the front leg. And that's just the way it shook out. The way I was crawling in the bushes and his horns was hung in vines and he was pushing forward and had the dog. And there wasn't really an opportunity to get him down.
Yeah. Or a need to.
Right. Or need to.
The whole point of it is not to go in and wrestle a deer.
No.
The whole point is to dispatch the animal.
That's right.
Well, in fairness, that's how you get hurt too. It's because with an audience, like I want these guys to.
Yeah, you want to be Tarzan.
Their mind's blown, Right, I want to be Tarzan.
Yeah.
So, then that's how I've seen people do that with hogs, and that's how you get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
My brother had 47 stitches in his forearm.
Listen, a hog will tear you up.
Yeah. A hog that was tied.
What?
Yep. And he just threw his head up, hit him in the arm.
Don't take long, does it?
47
stitches.
3 layers, 47 stitches.
Good gosh.
Which doesn't mean that it was like, it wasn't like,
all the way, but it was
a
layered up.
cut or something, but, it was
like
it was
it's probably 6 inches. And they had to do surgery and all to fix it.
Good gosh. So you mentioned earlier the first horn deer you caught.
Yeah.
So the first buck you caught. What was that like for you? What was that story?
Oh man, it was. So I had my nephew with me. My nephew at the time was 14, and he lived with my wife and I for a few months. And I had gotten him out of school. Anyway,
he was sick, so he had to get out.
Yeah, right. He was sick. Yeah. He's probably a lot better off me than he was in school at that point in his life. But anyway, so we went to track this deer, and it really was a short track. I mean, the guy had shot the deer. I can't remember if it was a gas line or power line, but it was a right of way, and long shot. Like the deer went down, but I don't think he'd even found any blood. He wasn't sure exactly where the deer was at. I put axle on it. Bam, he went off like 120 yards in the woods and caught this deer. So I I'm still like not experienced with this kind of thing yet. So when I get in there, I see the deer, like I'm like, oh, this is for real.
This is happening.
So I'm not sure how to grab the deer or anything else. So I just ran up and grabbed him with my left hand because I'm right-handed, and I had a knife, and I mean a big knife, a hip knife, and so I stuck him. I mean, it was like I knew what to do, and I guess I had the knife. Undoubtedly, I expected that, at some point or whatever. But anyway, that was the first one that I'd ever killed. And I wish I had really good records. I used to keep a spreadsheet every year on the hogs I caught, the dogs I used. I mean, like an extensive spreadsheet. Same thing with deer. And I wish I knew how many I'd killed with a knife. But so last year I think I was a little above 50%, which is unusual. Not this past year, not 24 but 23. So but most years it's around a third. Around a third of the deer I find. So you got to think if I've found 600, then probably 200 I've killed with a knife, something like that.
That's interesting because not this year. I haven't totaled it this year as far as alive versus dead. But last year it was within a deer of 50% were alive.
Yeah.
And
that's where I was last year too. I don't know. It's just odd. I don't know.
People are shooting legs more, I guess.
Well, it could also be the shots that I take because a lot of times I don't take a call, but I like, if I have a dog that can close the deal on a live deer, I like taking those calls. Because one, nobody ever thinks he's alive. I like that because I like to be right,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things. It makes it more fun. You know, somebody's thinking,
I smoked that one.
Yeah, his lungs are hanging out the side of him. I shot him with a 338 Ultra Mag, and maybe not. 2 miles later.
The stuff people will shoot whitetail deer with and not kill the deer.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you are shooting a gun that you could kill an elephant
Anything
with.
Right. And sometimes so that's what I've found through my career tracking deer. That's the problem. Nobody knows, and I don't mean this disrespectfully because you can't know what you don't know, but nobody knows what bullets are for. Like, everybody has an opinion on ballistic tip or soft point. There's not anything wrong with either. They have a different purpose.
Yeah.
And same thing with calibers. Like, my wife shoots a 22 250, little bitty 45 grain ballistic tip bullet. Fantastic. Kill all the deer. You can kill any deer in this world with that gun if you hit it right.
Yeah.
You stick it in his shoulder, better get a dog because it's not going to penetrate. It's just not heavy enough.
Yeah.
And even at 4,000 feet per second, it's not heavy enough to penetrate on a big. And everybody always says the same thing. I've shot 100 deer with this gun. They all fail. Right. You shot 100 does that had little 2-inch shoulders. You shot a buck this time, and if you shoot him behind the shoulder, no problem. In the shoulder with that bullet. So ballistic tips are made to give that animal all of that force, and that soft points are made to penetrate. And that's what they do. And so that depends on which one of them I'm shooting on, where I want to shoot the deer. Yeah. And everybody has an opinion on that too. Some people like, I'm gonna neck shot him. Nah, I don't recommend that. And so, cause there's only, if you think about it, you need to understand a deer's anatomy. So when you look at a deer in his neck, there's 2 things that'll kill him. His artery, his jugular, or his spine. If you miss those 2, and with a doe, her neck's as big as your calf, it's kind of hard to miss one of those, or at least there's enough force from that bullet to shock that. Mm-hmm. Right. But when you got a buck and he's got a 30-inch neck or 25-inch neck or whatever, that's completely, it's just a bunch of meat. Right.
Yeah.
And so that makes a big difference. Same thing. One of the ones that nobody thinks about is people who call me and say, I shot the deer in the chest.
All right. This was some of the greatest advice he's ever given me. And I never thought about this until he told me, but this makes so much sense.
Okay.
So they say, I shot the deer in the chest. Wrong. He didn't have a chest.
Okay.
Take his shoulders off and what's left.
Yeah.
It's a V.
Yeah, right.
So when you shoot him in the chest, a lot of times, not all, most time if it penetrates his body cavity, he's down right there.
Right.
But if he runs off.
But if you shoot him like in what you would call the chest, you've shot through his brisket and there's nothing there.
Well, his shoulders. So everything's shaped like a V.
Right.
And then you got those 2 big blocky shoulders on the side that give him a chest.
Right, yeah.
So that bullet, and I realize it's a bullet and it penetrates, but it tends to run down that rib cage and not penetrate his vitals. So you bust that shoulder, you blow it. On the same way, I've seen deer shot like this too, where they shot quartering away and you took it in behind the shoulder just like you would do, and it run under that shoulder and not penetrate his vitals. That's not unusual either.
it was such a cool thought to me because I don't know how many deer I've cleaned in my life, but to be able to picture that deer without shoulders standing up and facing me and thinking about what is there really to hit there. And it ain't much, even on a big deer. And that made a lot of sense. And then we've talked a lot about with bow hunting angles and to think about it that way.
Well, that's the questions really I ask.
Oh yeah,
you especially with archery more so than gun, but with gun too. But that bullet's it's different. It's got a different wound channel, and the angles don't matter as much because it doesn't drop as much. You shoot 50 yards, I mean, but it's big different with a bow on where the entry point is, exit point, all these things. They matter. I mean, because they matter on what's there to hit.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going off of like with a bullet. Your energy can sometimes kill the deer.
Energy.
Right. You ain't doing that with an arrow.
Nope. Right.
You either hit something. Listen, we know, we get it. We also know that was a mistake. All right, but
that's intentional. That's my story, and
I've done it twice, and it
there you
intentional
go.
both times.
Yeah. Wes is his new favorite thing is headshots only. That's what he tells me and Brandon that all the time.
All the time.
We talk about where to hit a deer, and he's just like headshot.
They go down.
Headshot only.
There you go. Right.
Whatever.
Hey, and if he runs off, I missed.
Yeah.
Then you gotta go look.
If it runs off, all right, well, that deer's not dead.
Yeah, no tracking, no nothing. He's either there or he's not.
Yeah,
there or not. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so when you're comparing those two, if you don't put that arrow through something that is a vital organ, I mean,
he hemorrhages to death with archery. For the most part, that's the way he dies. And if he's not, he's not.
I mean, because you're not breaking bones and stuff. I mean, people talk about shooting
even the
deer.
shock of the force of a bullet and the way it's made. Like you said, can kill a deer.
That can kill a deer. You can
listen.
You can shoot a deer in the shoulder or something and never hit a vital organ.
Right.
And just the sheer shock of, depending on what gun you're shooting and what bullet you're shooting, just the impact, just the kinetic energy that you put into that animal can kill it.
Right.
I mean, graveyard
it's like
dead.
these kids getting hit with a baseball under the arm, stop their heart. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's no.
Did y'all see where that kid got hit in the face with a baseball? Saturday? No, Sunday. Oh my gosh. He's fine.
Wait, like
he's
Georgia
fine.
Southern?
No, it was like
their baseball season started.
It was like I think maybe they were playing Vanderbilt. So whoever Vanderbilt played this weekend, dude got hit right in the face.
Man.
And he was smiling afterwards. Probably not 5 seconds afterwards, but he was busted.
When
up
he realized
pretty
he
hard.
wasn't dead, he's like, "Oh,
you
great."
think if a baseball can do that, what's a 7 mag gonna do, or what's a you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something.
So you got that weight.
Decent.
It's all energy. It's weight and speed, velocity, and man, which is why. And Brandon, I know he's heard me say this. So if I'm tracking a deer, like a lot of things, I'll take tracks I feel not very confident in if the hunter understands we're against the wall.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But if I'm taking a stretch, something that might be a stretch, when they tell me I shot the deer with, I want it to start with a 3 because you just get more room for error. If it's 300, 30-06, 30-30, 308, you name it, there's more force there that does damage. You know what I mean? So
yeah, we'll just go ahead and make some people mad. But Marty's favorite gun to track a deer, that's been shot with is what?
6.5 Creedmoor. And it changes through time. It's whatever's popular. A lot of deer are shot with a lot more guns that are popular. So that's a little bit of a disadvantage. Like when I started tracking deer, it was 270.
Yeah, that's a sarcastic comment. I had somebody that called me and this was probably the first or second year, and I called Marty and he said, "What'd they shoot him with?" I said, 6.5 Creedmoor. He said, "Well, first thing to do when you get there is take that 6.5 Creedmoor and see how far you can throw it."
Yeah.
But and some people love them, and I've got friends that shoot them.
There's nothing.
And again, you hit them in the right spot, no problem. But there's just not as much forgiveness,
right? And that 300 mag, you shoot him wherever, you got some forgiveness. You just don't like it. Like I said, my wife shoots a 22 250, a really small bullet, no forgiveness, none. I lost a really good 9-point when I had Axel. As a matter of fact, I tracked that deer most of the day with Axel, and when Axel was wore out, I went and got a buddy of mine had a dog named Shaggy that was a really good deer dog and put him on it and tracked him most of the rest of the day with that dog and still didn't get the deer.
Yeah.
Just was what it was.
But, yeah, I mean, and Marty and I will get on the phone, and we'll talk for an hour.
Yeah.
Just about dogs and just or asking him questions or stories, or it's just one of those things like he said, with, just a mutual love of something that we do and just enjoy talking about dogs and deer and hunting and that kind of thing. And it's just been good for me, man. It's been something that, I don't know how much my wife appreciates it because during deer season, I'm, sometimes 2-3 o'clock in the morning getting home. But
my wife's never gone a lot with me because I pawn her off. I'm like, talk to these people for a minute. But she went with me more probably this year than she's ever gone before. And it was like cash money. I don't think we found a single live deer. They were all within like 50 yards, and she was like, "Man, I'm good at this."
That's right.
So it was a whole different experience than what she's. And my kids used to be the same way. Like I'd carry them, and they like, "We don't want to go with Dad." He like I had to just sit in the truck and wait. But then as they get older, to tag along. Yeah, my son actually tracked. Oh, I don't know. He's probably tracked 40 or 50, 30 or 40 or 50 deer. He's killed several himself, with a knife. And my middle daughter, nope, out. No briars. I'm out, Daddy. Count me out. My baby girl likes to go, but she's not real. She don't want to really be involved, like as far as jumping on deer, anything like that. But she loves to go. Yeah. She hog hunts with me too. So
okay.
Yeah, my youngest son, Reed, he loves it. He loves as much as I do. There's a lot of nights he can't go because of school and stuff like that. And he's like, Dad, I want to stab one. I want to stab one. I want to stab one. And so he's 14, so he's getting to that point where he can do a little more. Right. But 2 years ago, we finally had a doe, and it was pretty close to dead. And he was always, I want to stab. I was like, all right, Reed, get your knife. Right. And he went over there to finish this deer off, and he took that knife, and when he hit the knife, it looked like he hit a wall. He was like, boing, yoing, 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 yoing. I'm like, son, you better go harder than that. You got to go. Yeah. And so and then this year, we had another one. Dogs caught it, and I knew it wasn't no worry of him getting hurt. And I was like, go, Reed, go. I was like, if you're going to go, you got to go now. You can't just stand there. You got to go.
Yeah. Commit.
And it's like you said, when you make that, you got to go. That's right. And so he's going up there, and I'm like, you can't do it like that. You got to go. Yeah. And so he gets up there and he goes, I can't stab it. And I'm like, why? He goes, the dogs. I was like, well, just don't stab the dog, stab the deer. And so, but that was the first one he actually did stab. And so he loves it. But, but I think my other two have learned, like, we might leave at 8 and get home at 1.
Right.
And they're like, I'm good, Dad. I think we're going to hang out here, Well,
that's what I'll leave on a Saturday morning. I'll get up early and do my run, and then I'll leave on Saturday morning, especially through October. Yeah. And I'll only track as many deer as I want to anymore. Used to, I'd have deer left over for the next day, and, I might track 15 deer in a long weekend, like a 3 or 4 day weekend. But, anyway, so it just, it can be long and laborious, but now I track what I want to track. Then I call Brandon, like, hey, I got to track. I don't want to do it.
It's kind of like the Gentile woman. I tell Marty this all the time. It's like the Gentile woman with Jesus when she's, talking with Jesus, and Jesus says, I came for the children of Israel. It's not right to, give food, know. And she's like, well, Lord, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. And that's what I tell him. I'm like, just send me your crumbs, Marty. Just send me your crumbs.
I'm more than happy to. If it happens after dark, I'm more than happy to. I don't want to be tracking deer after dark.
Oh, Lord. So.
Well, all right. So the new thing with tracking is guys getting these thermal drones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And everybody, you look at it, it's like, man, that looks so cool and everything. I don't think people understand what y'all are doing. We need to follow the two of y'all next season with some cameras.
Yeah.
And strap some cameras to your heads and to your dogs and let people see what is really happening.
Yeah,
I mean,
crazy.
I've got some footage. I wore a GoPro a lot last year, only a couple of times this year, and I actually have one I put on Remo this year, but I didn't have a good harness. The GoPro.
You were telling me the other day
well,
you got a better harness.
But it came in this week, and it's actually one that they use in the military on canines,
dogs,
and so I'm gonna be able to get better footage from that. But like, I just want people to be able to see the type of stuff that happens because it is different. It's just it's just a different thing that
it's definitely a niche.
Yes, and it's again. I mean, all credit to Marty because I would have never gotten into this if it hadn't been for him. And it's something that has just been. Man, I'd rather go find a big buck than kill one.
Oh, I most certainly would. I would rather do that than hog hunting. Like at the end of the day, a lot of the dog things are phasing out because of land. It's just properties are being broken up into smaller parcels, and
that's why we quit dog hunting.
Yeah,
because they changed the laws back in what was that, like 299 or something like that, 98.
Yep.
They changed the laws, and you had to have certain amount of land, which we still had it, but when that happened, there was a perception change too.
Right.
With the general public, right? And it went from dog hunting, which was it was very commonplace, to why are y'all even doing this?
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon to come down 301 and see trucks parked out
all the time. Right. Yeah,
I always think about when we would go, like the county I live in, there's never been dog hunting allowed in it. But like we would go to my aunt's house in Florida and always going down like through the swamp.
Oh yeah,
man, those trucks would be lined up and down the highway,
down around Blackshear and stuff like that. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Jessup, Waycross, all in those areas down there. There was a lot of dog hunting happening down there. But yeah,
so that's getting to be a thing of the past.
Yeah,
I probably, if my kids continue to get older and don't show an interest in wanting to hunt, like when my baby girl moves out. My son, when he gets out of the Navy, I don't know if he'll be interested in hog hunting or anything like that, but I could see myself not hog hunting at some point in my life, maybe, but like I can never imagine not having a deer tracking dog.
Yeah.
I just enjoy it that much. And even if I don't track 60 or 70 deer a year, I would love to find, track deer for kids and just all that kind of experience. I really enjoy it. That's by far my most favorite hunting experience.
Well, you love something, and this is true for me. You love something when you're willing to try to keep yourself in some resemblance of shape.
Yeah, right.
To be
when
able
you don't
to
eat all the donuts, so you can
so that you can actually run, because you run sometimes you're sprinting a quarter mile, half mile. I mean, it's almost. And then you got to get there, and then you got to fight.
And it's not on asphalt track. I mean, it's mud knee deep, and
especially now with all the down trees.
Oh my gracious, horrible.
So it's but and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'd love to hear some other things from Marty, because the other thing we share is the love of Christ, and that's been something we've been able to share through the years. But you're talking about the first buck you killed. Well, the first year I tracked, I was getting to know Marty. People really didn't know that I had a dog, and I'd just gotten the white bulldog from you, and halfway through that season, and Remo was doing good tracking, but he was baying, but he wasn't catching. And I had the bulldog, and I think we had found one or two does. Well, the last day of the season, I get a call from a guy in Sylvania, and go over there, and he had shot a real nice 8-point. Well, put the dogs on it, and it's funny because put my dogs out, they're going to run around, pee, poop, they're going to do all that stuff, and so they kind of go in the woods the other direction, and everybody always freaks out. They're like, no, I'm like, just hold on, right. And so then they come back. Well, they don't go about 150 yards, and Remo starts baying. And so me and Reed take off running, and the guy's coming behind us, and we got a little bit of it. He got a little bit of it on his phone that he sent to me. But I can remember, and I'll never forget, as we're running through there, and I can see in my headlamp, I can see the white bulldog, and I can see just the white on her, and I can see the deer's white tail.
Right.
And as we're getting in there, she's got him, holding on to him, but he's still up on his feet.
Right.
And that's that moment where you're like, I ain't never done this before, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And this is a big 8-point on his feet.
Yeah.
Gut
it's a
shot.
live animal, 200 pounds.
Gut shot.
That can hurt you, right?
And walking, and the dog's trying to hold him. And I'm like, I don't know what to do, but whatever I do, I gotta commit to it.
Yeah, right.
And so I still don't even know what I did. I'm pretty sure I stabbed him. I grabbed him across his one side of his horns across, and I stabbed him on his feet.
Right.
But later I was like, Reed, what happened? And he goes,
Did he know?
Yeah, he was with me. He was right
what
behind
I'm saying,
me.
like a lot of times your mind's just everything just
Yeah,
a blur
so
until you get comfortable.
he saw it all. So I was like, Reed, what happened? He goes, Dad, I don't know really. You did some kind of ninja move, and I'm not real sure what happened. And so I was like, well, I'll take that as a compliment.
I don't know the ninja moves yet.
I don't know what it was either. But, I'll never forget that. And, man, I just appreciate everything you've done and the friend you've been to me, even just mostly through text and calls.
Yeah.
But, man, it's just been a lot of fun. And so, yeah, thank you for all of that. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate so Brandon's a guy that, a lot of times when you need prayer, everybody, I pray for you, whatever. So, and a lot of times you don't want to necessarily involve people. Like I don't want to burden my wife with certain things, in a church. Sometimes I don't want to burden, and sometimes you don't need that information. You know what I mean? Like inside of your church, so I can call Brandon and say, hey, I need you to pray for this, for our church or for my family or for whatever. Sometimes it's just those things. And so I appreciate that. I mean, that's been really, and it's something it's one of these people I know if I call and say, hey man, will you pray for this for me? I know he will. I got another good friend, Wes Collins.
Yeah.
Really interesting guy.
Wes,
really interesting guy.
Wes,
does falconry, jiu-jitsu, raises boa constrictors,
I was like, me and him can be friends until you got to the snake. I'm out right there. Yeah. I'm out. Sorry.
Wes, a real neat dude. But
Wes, we could have been friends, buddy. we could have had a thing, man. God, falconry, that sounds so cool, but snakes, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
I don't like them either, man. That's a spider, I don't care. But, snakes.
I can't do snakes.
I don't do them either, man. So, but,
good grief, that's crazy.
So if you got a second, I want to tell a story about Gypsy this year.
Yeah.
Maybe take 5 minutes.
Yeah, whatever.
It's just a real neat story. It was kind of a new experience for me. So, and this was a really, I took this trek at night, which, like I said, I don't do a whole lot, but
she knows we can't get on to her right. So she's just going around the table loving on everybody.
That's right.
We're talking about we are talking about a dog.
We're talking about here. I'm gonna take a picture real quick.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because it's not.
Yep, this is what it looks like this morning. There you girl. There you go.
So I took this track at night. Like I said, I tracked deer for these guys before. Got there. I don't remember all the specific details, but put the dog on. It's always the same thing. She's running around using the bathroom and stuff. And they're like, no, the deer didn't go that way. So then she takes off the way the deer went. Yeah, that's exactly where
Yeah.
So anyway, so she goes off in the woods, tracks. I feel good about what she's doing, about 200 yards. She jumps and runs about 700 yards and shows tree. And I'm like, golly. So I take off and it's pretty rough. But I'm humping it and I get there. And anyway, right before I get there, probably 50, 75 yards, I can hear a hog going, ho, 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 ho. So I know they've caught a hog. So I get in there. It's probably 175-pound sow. So I stab her, hook the dog's back on the lead. By this point, my blue bulldog's there too. So lead them back up. Oh, I'm furious. I mean, my britches, I didn't wear my briar pants, so my britches are shredded. My legs bleeding and just aggravated. I'm tired. But I don't like to get outdone. So I go back, start again. So I put my blue bulldog up because I'm like, he doesn't have any experience. But I know Gypsy, if I can work her past where she jumped that sow, because she jumped a sow in the bottom where where the deer had gone because I found blood. So anyway, so I'm like, if I can work her past that, I'll get past it. So long story short, I did. I worked her past it. She went about 400 more yards. I'm finding blood the whole way, and she jumps the deer. Well, I know when she was caught on that sow, I could hear that sow biting her collar, her GPS collar. Didn't think a whole lot about it. It's just, I mean, hog hunting is something that, you know, but you play that stuff back in your mind later. Anyway, so as soon as she jumps deer 50, 75 yards, she hits the creek. When she hits the creek, collar goes out. That hog had busted the collar, and that water killed the collar. So I don't understand this next point. I guess maybe just God's goodness because that collar hadn't worked since. But I called and I called and I called, and she's not coming back. If she loses the deer, she'll eventually, you know, make her way back to me. But anyway, so I called and I hear a dog barking, and I go 3/4 of a mile that way and pretty much determine it's probably a house dog. I got no idea where this dog's at. No idea. So finally I called the guys and I'm like, told them what happened. I'm like, I'm just going to make my way back to the truck. And I mean, who knows? I have no idea what to do at this point. So anyway, so I get back to the truck. Well, about the time I get back to the truck, she pops up on my GPS and shows 0.91 miles down this creek. So I hop in the truck and we get around there as quick as possible. And I get out. We actually get down a little logging road that crosses this creek, and I get within like 80 yards of her, 70 or 80 yards. Well, it's thick. All the hardwoods are down. It takes a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes for me to get that 80 yards. But anyway, when I get there, she's in shock on the bank of the creek, and her back legs are up under her, and she's all hunched up, and she's like seized. She's seized up, having a seizure. And so I just reached down and scooped her up, picked her up. When I did, I heard sloshing in the creek, and I had a headlight, and I looked, see down the creek, and I could see the deer. And I was like, oh, she just had this deer. The deer's right here. But anyway, that was just the dog's my priority. Yeah. So I get her out, and before I get her out of the woods, and not to be too graphic, I don't know who all listens to this, not to be too graphic, but I've killed a lot of stuff, but there's that point when something dies, when a lot of times it'll tense, really, really, really tense, and then it'll just relax. And that's it, you know. Well, she kind of did that. I thought I'm losing my dog, you know, and didn't know what. I had no blood. I didn't see anything. So long story short, I get out, get in the road. I probably said, the hunter kept saying, here's your other dog. Here's your other dog. I've done got aggravated with him. I probably said some things that, anyway. So long story short, I get her breathing. So you can pull a dog's front leg, you can pull it up and draw air into their lungs like it's CPR for a dog. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm a CPR, you know, specialist.
You were trying to save your dog.
Nonetheless, the dog started back breathing. She still was pretty much unresponsive. So I got her in the back seat of the truck, and I'm like, I need some steroids in her, dexamethasone. I need to get these things in her, and it'll bring her out of shock and this kind of stuff. So I told the guys, I had some friends that hustled to Vide and got me some and brought them to me. I didn't have any at the house. Got home, gave her the meds, left her in the laundry room, and she's still kind of pitiful looking, you know. So about 3:30 in the morning, she comes back. Like, I didn't put up a barrier or anything, so she just comes back and comes in my bedroom and like licking my hand. So I get up. She wants to go outside, so I let her outside. She went to the bathroom, come back, and so I put up a barrier. I put her back in the laundry room and put up a barrier. Well, about 6:30 that morning, it's just chairs, but she jumps over the chairs, comes back in there again. So I carried her outside and put her on her cable. Anyway, I had we were doing some storm cleanup and stuff at the time, and so I had things to do that day. But I called the guy and I was like, "Look, for that deer to have still been there, he's hurt." Yeah. Like, she had him caught for 20 or 30 minutes. And pretty much what I had came up with in my mind is she had that deer caught on the bank of that creek until I got close. And when that deer heard me breaking stuff coming out, he drug her off in the creek. Yeah. And she was hot. And that cold water, like it was frigid cold. Yeah. And that cold water shocked her. And that's where the shock came from. So anyway, the more I thought about it, I was like, we can get this deer. Like, we can go back and get this deer. So I called the guy, and he was like, yeah, sure, we'll try, whatever. So went out without making it too long. Went around the opposite side of the creek the way I had saw him go, because I was like, we'll cross-cut his path. Nothing. So I came back around and went back to the exact spot where I found her. And as soon as I got that, and you could tell she's not jumping real high now. She's wore out. Like, she's she's okay. Like, she's not gonna die, but it was tough experience. So she starts off down the creek exactly the way the deer went and turned and went off in the woods about 75 yards. But then she went on to about 125 and showed treed. I was like, it was where she treed was right where we had walked on the opposite side of the creek. And I'm like, I didn't walk that close to that deer and she not smell it, So I started walking along that way and I got out to where the pines are, so there's gallberries and briars like waist deep, but you could see across. The pines are thin enough you could see across. Well, I can see the deer and she's fighting him. So I tear out running and go. And just before I got to her, he got loose from her and ran. So all these guys are parked on this logging road and they're sitting there. About that time the deer crosses, then Gypsy, then me. So she runs him about another 75 or 100 yards on that side of the road and catches him again. I get in there and kill him or whatever. But man, it's just that, like I said, it takes the drive. You have to have the drive. The dog has to have the drive. You had to think about it. Like if I hadn't seen that deer, I'd have never gone back.
Right.
But the fact that deer was still there after 30 minutes told me she had him called all that time.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just those type of experiences when if you need a tracker and you got somebody with experience, you kind of have to trust that they've done this. They've seen some things and they know kind of what's going on. But anyway, it's a pretty neat experience.
Where did they even hit that deer? Do you remember?
So I think he was hitting a leg. I got pictures. I had to look back at the picture. I'm pretty sure he was hitting a back leg, though. I think he.
How often does that happen when y'all go tracking a deer?
Gosh.
It's almost always when he's hitting the back end. Either the deer's going away from him and they trying to tuck it in to his shoulder, or it runs, or his quarter two and it runs under his body. They shoot low and hit him in the back leg. Most time in the back leg. That's the case. In my experience.
As far as busted legs, I probably tracked.
There's a lot.
I don't know. You don't realize how many deer get shot in the leg until you start tracking.
Yeah.
I had one towards the end of the season this year that they called me, and these people I track a lot for, and they called me and said, not saying they're bad shots, they just called me a lot, but
well, it's just a few inches difference.
Yeah, and this was literally like at 2 inches.
Right.
It was a high leg, and I get there and they're like, they had tracked him probably 300-400 yards, and they said, he's just pouring blood, and they were like, he's dead. He's got to be dead because he's just pouring blood, and you see that much blood and you think, but it takes a lot of blood for a mature buck to bleed out, and so
he don't have any quit.
Yeah, and he ain't gonna. Yeah, and so I get there and they're like, he's dead. We really think, of course, you think lungs or you think this, you think that. Well, I get there and I look down, and the first thing I saw was a little piece of meat. Second thing I saw was a bone. Yeah. And so I didn't say nothing, but I said, this deer's going to be alive. So I picked up that piece of bone and I put it in my pocket and put the dogs on it. They go, I don't know, 800 yards, start baying.
And when y'all say they go 800 yards, you're not talking about straight line 800 yards away from you, or are you?
Yes.
So the distance will always be linear on the GPS.
Right. Okay.
But they may go.
They may go 2,000 yards to go 800.
That is possible.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes. And so a lot of times what I'll try to do is I'll try to clear my stats on my GPS so that when we get there, I can know pretty close to exactly how far they went.
Right.
Because I can look at it and in a straight line, it might have been we went a mile, but if I look on where they went, it's 2.5. Right. And so, because I'm going straight line trying to get there, they've tracked this deer in circles and everything.
It's crazy to me that you can shoot a deer and that joker's going to go
a
mile or 2 miles, like y'all said, and that's wild.
This one,
you just think we have in our mind that high powered rifle or whatever, but especially a high powered rifle, like it's not a science, but there are only certain things that kill an animal,
A friend of mine that's a doctor, he told me, he said, you have to shut down one of its systems.
Right.
Yes, you got to shut down its neurological system, its cardiovascular system, its pulmonary system.
Right.
One of the systems has to be hit down good enough to shut it down.
That makes sense.
And I thought that was a good way of looking at it. But this deer, I found a bone, and I was like, I'm not going to say nothing, but that deer's alive. But I felt really confident we were going to get him.
Right.
And so they went probably 800 yards, jumped him, ran him another couple hundred yards, caught him. went in there and killed him, and I handed him the bone, and I was like, I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I knew this deer was alive, and but it's just one of those things where you really don't realize how many deer get shot in the leg, because again, it's not that big of a miss until you start tracking.
Yeah, 2 inches forward, 2 inches low, 2 inches back. That's really no man's land.
Yeah.
Like that deer will die, but you run him to the other end of the earth. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I guess what we decide, that's probably spleen or something. Like, it's a really weird thing. But if you hit a deer 3 or 4 inches back and about an inch or two from the bottom of his body, that is a tough track.
The one that got me this year in the elbow, that's where he was hit. Right. And he went in a beaver pond and about waist deep. Looking back, and it sounds bad, looking back, I should have just drowned him. Yeah. But when I jumped in, normally they're way more concerned with the dogs than they are with me. Right. Well, when I jumped in, I think it splashed and it caught his attention. And they had him, but he starts coming at me, so I ended up grabbing his horn. Right. But I say, because that's the shot, and he was still very alive.
And in the water. So most of the time when you have a puncture in that deer's body, in his body cavity, as soon as he gets to water, he melts like an ice cream. I mean, just like that, because it drops his body temperature. So you can have a deer that's fighting. I mean, you might have run him 3 or 4 miles, and if he has a hole through, it doesn't matter where, but if it's to the point where his diaphragm pulling in and out will allow water into that hole until it drops his body temperature, and he's done. I mean, like, he might still be alive when you get there, but it really, he goes into hypothermia, to hypothermic shock. So
which is good if you're in a cypress pond. It's bad if they're swimming a river.
Yes,
because they're
real
going to
bad.
die.
They're going to drown, right? And they're going to go under, and
you just don't.
Your dog's there swimming around trying to find him. Axel, I did that with him one day with a deer, and that's tough.
Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, that shot right there is I've learned from Marty, and now I've experienced that's like, as you say.
So
that's
for all the gun hunters out there, not ethical. I don't recommend it. Well, I do recommend it actually. But if you got the Boone and Crockett and you got to have him, stick it square in the middle, pull the trigger, and call me.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. You stand way less likely chance of missing him because you got feet on each side of those crosshairs, for error. And that's that gut shot. If you hit him where you're aiming, that gut shot, you find him 100% of the time.
He's going to die.
Really?
If his gut's punctured, he's going to die. Huh.
Yep.
Got to.
Yeah, he's got to. He can't overcome that without surgery.
He might overcome missing part of a lung or a lung, but he ain't.
Yeah, tracked a doe one time that was alive. I killed her. Told the buddy of mine, like, hey, like, she was hit real good on one side when I stuck her. Well, then when we went to throw her in the truck, we flipped her over. She's hit perfect on that side. This is archery. And I said, you cleaning that deer? He said, yeah. I said, when you get her lungs, send me a picture. I got one on my phone. I'll show you. But through the lungs. And she run, I mean, she would several hundred yards when I jumped her, and then she ran several hundred more yards before the dogs caught her. And I would guess, because archery, it's such a surgical cut.
Right. And
without maybe it dragging stuff in from the hair or whatever, I would guess maybe without infection, that deer probably fine. Because as long as that lung doesn't deflate and the diaphragm keeps pressure, I mean, I don't know why she would have died.
That's wild, man. That is wild. It definitely gives you a different perspective on what it takes to kill a deer.
It's different.
where you need to be, all that kind of stuff. Man, I've learned a lot this morning. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's just fun talking about, obviously. But like I said, I've just learned a ton. And what a lot of people don't know is when they call me, I call him. So
if I don't know, I'll make it up. So.
If I have questions,
there you go.
If I have questions, I call him. So I'll call him a lot of times. I'm on the way, and I'm like, and sometimes it's just something I've never heard, or they tell me something, and I'm like, I don't know about that, and I'll call him and just say, am I wasting my time? Yeah. And I was like, dang it. So, but you never know.
But you're right, and you gain experience through that. Whereas I'm like, I'm just not taking that. I mean,
you've been there, done that.
I've been there, done it, and I mean, there's always possibility. If deer's hit, there's always possibility. But there's some of them just Like I said, especially when it's a hunter that's like, well, I know I killed him. He can't. I heard him fall 50 yards, and I'm like, you've been looking for 6 hours. You probably ain't hit it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there's and if there's that arrogance of, if you don't want to at least entertain what I'm telling you I think happened, I can't. I'm just not going to do it, because at the end of the day, if I don't find a deer and I don't feel good about it when I get there, then I'm trash and my dog's trash, and I don't want to put I don't want to put that out there. More so for the dog than for me. Mm-hmm. Dog has more reputation than I do. So,
yeah, that's wild. Well, Marty, we appreciate you coming.
Yes, sir. I've enjoyed it. I talk dogs all the time.
Heck yeah, man! It's fun to talk through this stuff and see how you got into it, and that drive for it. I mean, good night. That's
a must-have. A lot of times people will go with you, like Brandon, will go with you, and then they'll say, "Well, I'm gonna get me a dog," and if you don't have, like, it has to be a real hunger, because most people will get a dog
and a little crazy.
Yeah. It's different.
You got to be a little stupid.
But you got to be dedicated to it. I mean, like really, really, really dedicated to it, because everybody's like, well, I'll get a dog, but you can't track 3 deer a year and have a great dog. It doesn't work like that. You need to track 50, 60 deer a year. I mean, you just need to.
And I've got some buddies that have gotten them that it's more of a pleasure thing. Right. They track their deer with them.
Yeah, you can find 100 yards dead in the thick, not a problem. But it's those other tracks that you better call somebody that knows,
Yeah, and it's when some of them, I'm like, they were like, I want to get a dog. And I'm like, well, what do you want it for? Yeah. And I'm like, because you need to understand now, October, November, if you ain't going to sleep much if you're going to really.
You also need to understand when you got a dog that every time you, especially this type of dog, every time you take your hand out of his collar, you may not put your hand back in his collar.
That's exactly right.
Like I have not lost a dog. I've had several close calls where I had dogs injured bad from deer, and I've lost several from hogs. But I mean, you may lose that dog. I mean, it's just part of it, isn't it?
Right. You never know. Every time, whether you're running deer with dogs, you tracking deer with dogs or rabbits, it doesn't matter. Every time you let that dog out of the box, you may never see the dog again.
And it's way more than like a hog or a deer being an animal that can kill it. Yeah. You got rattlesnakes, you got cars, alligators now be really bad. I've lost quite a few dogs, alligators. All kind of things. I mean, you like a hog or a deer, you catch in a pond and thrash around a little bit. If there's a gator there, he gonna come see what's going on. So you got all those types of things that play into it, and so you don't want a dog. I think that's what most people want. They want a dog to have at hunting camp, and I can find this deer, and that's great. There's nothing wrong. I mean, everybody has a different pleasure in what they do with their dogs. But if you, and I get this a lot too, where people have tracked a deer with their dog, and like, my dog can't find it, and I'm like, okay, and so we'll go into why, but yeah, if you got that really hard track, you need a good dog, and you need a handler with experience as well. Because I could give Gypsy to somebody that had no idea what they were doing, and she wouldn't be near the dog. Yeah. And I'm not pulling my own chain. It's just experience.
You've done it enough. Yeah, you've done it enough to know, all right, we need to get past this, or we got a scent pool right here that's throwing her off or whatever, and just getting past that.
Or she can run a mile and catch that deer, and if you're like, well, I wonder what she's doing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you got to get there.
It takes a gritty, stubborn dog and a gritty, stubborn handler. Yeah. In a way, stupid, stubborn, somewhere in there, just to do it. But it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. All right, cool. We good? Another podcast where Wes didn't say much of anything.
I know, man. I didn't shut up enough to give you a chance, Wes. I'm sorry.
You know what? At least he got up this morning and was here, and went and got us donuts that nobody ate and all that kind of stuff. We
ain't left yet.
All right. Well, good deal. We'll do it again. Appreciate it again, Marty.
Yes, sir. I enjoyed it too.
There you go. All right. Kill it. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed listening. Hey, reach out to us and let us know what you want to hear about. Join the conversation online. Hop over on your favorite social channel and give us some comments. Shoot us an email. You can email us at podcast@bowtreader.com. That's BOWTREADER.com. TREADER.com. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about maybe if you want to come join us on the podcast or any kind of topics that you want us to cover, regardless of what it is. If it's hunting related, something that's specific to bows or arrows, new gear, old gear, if you got any kind of spiritual questions, anything about your faith that you're interested in, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to cover it for you. And thank you again so much for listening. God bless you.